No conky donkey, no fun voiceover. Just me for this introduction. The episode you're about to see was actually recorded late last year, November, and it's taken me until now to edit it all together. The reason is because shortly afterwards, Lydia Menzies, who you will better know as the enigmatic Liz, passed away. She knew she was ill. If you go listen to some of the episodes, the previous episodes, you wouldn't know. She maintained humor and a brilliant attitude to mathematics and entertainment throughout all of it. And that's how she would want to be remembered. So please enjoy the episode. I don't want to stop, I don't want to stop you enjoying the episode. I think it's a great episode. It's really informative and really funny. But if you're able to, and if you're willing, please think about giving to Breast Cancer Now, Lydia's charity of choice. And with that, on with the show. Hello, and welcome to Maths at Bitcoin, where I am joined now and forevermore by the cryptid Ben Parker and the financially dubious Liz. How are you guys?
Very well, very well.
Marvellous, Thomas. So lovely to be here again, or not be here. So lovely to be here in spirit, on Zoom.
I'm out of lockdown, bitches.
Oh
How
my
are
God.
you?
I knew there had to be an advantage of living in Wales, and now we found it.
So yeah, whilst you all go into lockdown, I am out of it.
Are you now? Are you COVID free? Are you snogging strangers? Is it?
To be honest, here's the secret. I didn't know we were out of lockdown until because I just don't go outside. Why? What's out there for me? Nothing. All the maths is inside. So it took Lorraine's parents, yes, my wife. They've joined us to bubble because it's they've not seen their granddaughter for years because of lockdown. And they told me today that there were people in the town. Why? What are they doing there? Who knew? But as the audience may see, and if you're listening to us, hello. We are joined by Crypto Jesus himself, Duncan Coutts. How are you doing, Duncan?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
We've been talking about this for years, and it's very difficult to pin you down to a date. So I'm very excited to be able to talk about this wonderful, incredible new money that is Bitcoin.
Fake internet money, yeah.
Money? What?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Are we getting paid at last?
Hooray!
Yeah, Ben, you'll be paid in Bitcoin. Oh,
Okay.
It's worthless. Oh, you're a millionaire. Oh, it's worthless again. Oh, you're a millionaire. No, it's worthless.
So why is Duncan here, Thomas?
Wait, are we
No,
not gonna do?
we'll get there. Well, I say Duncan is our expert. We will be talking about Bitcoin when we get to the math zone.
Okay.
Ben really wants to get on today. He really wants to get on. He's been looking at the data from our videos. No one's been watching them because we're too long and we talk too much apparently. But before we do talk about the interesting, in-depth subject, which is Bitcoin, which we all want to know so much more about, how have our lives been mathematically?
Well, I've been to two places of mathematical interest since we last spoke. So I went to, now should I do the long one first? So I went to Bletchley Park, which was cool. It was really cool.
I like Bletchley Park as an idea. It's a very cool idea, but it needs money. It needs money behind it, and it just doesn't have the investment.
No, perhaps not. But it was still nice kind of wandering around being like, oh, look, an Enigma machine. And oh, look, those big computery things with the wheels.
Did you go to the computer museum they have there as well?
We didn't go to the computer museum. As I understand it, they used to be the same thing and then they had a fight.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Apparently.
Liz, we've
Yeah.
literally done maths at the Enigma, the imitation game, where they talk about the bombs, and you come back from Bletchley Park saying the big wheelie spinny computer things.
Well, it was a month ago now that I went, so I've forgotten what they're all called.
Did you get to see Alan Turing's teddy bear?
I don't think I did see his teddy bear, but I did see his office. Is his teddy bear in his office?
I haven't got my finger puppets. Imagine Alan Turing is here. Hello, Liz. How are you?
Oh God, we're not.
Hello, Finger Alan.
No.
So yes, did you enjoy Bletchley Park?
I did.
You can send a letter from there, and you get a personalised frank stamp.
No, I didn't do that. I mean, I did. I had my daughter with me. She's just learning to walk, so no, she did not. But so that kind of slowed us down a little bit in the enjoyment of Bletchley Park. But yeah, it was lovely to see where they did everything, and it was kind of. I liked how they didn't put too much emphasis on Turing. You kind of, if you watch all the films and kind of, get into the pop culture-ness of it, you kind of would believe that Alan Turing had single-handedly sort of done all the code breaking at Bletchley.
There were a few other names. There was Tommy Flowers, for example. There was one. There are a number of other names around this, but yeah, Alan Turing is definitely the poster boy.
I was just going to say one of the things that kind of really struck me. They had a kind of exhibition up about this guy called Bill Tutter.
Oh yes, the Tuts.
Who, I mean, did all sorts of amazing stuff and seems to be like the father of graph theory. And I don't know what graph theory is, and I'm not going to go into it. But one of the things that did really strike me is that when he went to Bletchley, I think he was 23, and he just nailed it. He just nailed a whole ton of stuff, and made these incredibly decisive contributions to code breaking. Dude was 23.
Well,
I mean, it's just amazing.
So, Liz, you said you went to 2 places this week. I mean, the other place must be even more fabulously exciting than Bletchley Park.
This is the fourth take. Fourth take.
Well, Ben, you're entirely right, because the other place I went was a car park, and it was called Decimal Place, and I thought you would be tickled by it.
It's a very attractively paved park.
It was not worth a fourth take.
But still, can you imagine the little meeting that they had where they were like, well, what should we call it? And someone went, would it be funny if we called it Decimal Place? And someone else went, yeah, all right.
But do you think that was actually how someone just did a point? Because they would say, oh, we haven't got a name for it yet, so we'll just point there. And someone took that as, we'll call it Decimal Place. It was more of a misunderstanding.
Well,
I bet the other people just didn't get it.
Oh, that's also very possible. I mean, that's beautiful. Where is that car park, by the way?
It's in Maidenhead.
So now, for all those people...
Oh, no, it's not. It's not. It's in Amersham. It's in Amersham. I tell a lie.
All those people looking for a maths walking tour of London.
Okay.
To the maths zone!
Hooray!
Okay, so Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? Am I a Bitcoin? Are you a Bitcoin? Bitcoin. First of all, Duncan, who are you? And why are we talking to you about Bitcoin?
Duncan, how long have I known you? Have I known you probably for 20 years?
Yeah, about that.
I had no idea you were anything to do with Bitcoin.
Well, I wasn't until a couple of years ago, really. Well,
I see.
Bitcoin didn't exist till a couple of years ago, to be fair.
No, that's true. No, I mean, you can become an expert in Bitcoin awfully quickly. It's a very young thing.
I see.
By the end of this podcast, everyone will be an expert.
Right. Okay.
Can we just clarify, because you're not involved with Bitcoin? It's a sort of.
That's right. I've professionally, I've been helping build one of these Bitcoin alternatives. I've not been working on Bitcoin directly, but as I say, I've been working on something kind of similar. So and I've discovered what Bitcoin is. And
but the question is, well, why Bitcoin, and why do we need another Bitcoin? I suppose
Well, I am not sure that we do need Bitcoin, or that we indeed need any of the alternatives. But my view is that if people are going to do it, you might as well do it right. Like if the world is going to choose these things, and I don't know if they'll be successful, but if people are going to build things on top of this, then it had better be right. Otherwise, they're just going to lose all their money, or if they start building real, I don't know, logistics systems on top of it or something.
It's an interesting thing. Like most of human society is just muddled along by building system on top of system, and we try and evolve it to something that works. You're really at the ground floor and thinking, how do we make this the best it can be? So it's a really interesting way of creating
it's a very difficult technical problem. And my view is that if you build it in the way that you build apps that run on your phone or something, it's going to be terrible, because how often do you have to update the software due to bugs on your we all know how full of bugs most software is. So my view is that I don't know if it's going to be successful, I don't know if it's going to be socially useful, but if you're going to do it and you believe it's real money, or you believe that you're going to build things of real importance or real value on top of these, which might have, as I said, it's not just like Bitcoin, but it's things like people want to do tracking of container cargo, or tracking.
Because now we're getting to the idea of
coffee,
the blockchain, aren't we? We're going to. So I think we need to break this down. Let's take a step.
So let's start with the layers. Okay, so you'll have heard people talk about cryptocurrencies, and you'll have heard people, and Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency.
Yes.
And you'll have heard people talk about blockchain, doing it on the blockchain.
Doing it.
Which is the new buzzword, right? So it used to be like we're doing everything with our multi-core in our cloud, with our big data. Well, the latest buzzword is doing it on the blockchain. But what does that really mean? So it is a real technology underneath the the IT world is full of stupid buzzwords and fads, but there is something real underneath, and it's not that complicated, and I did discover what it was. So hopefully I should be able to explain it.
Excellent.
So what the hell is blockchain? Blockchain is a technology for distributed databases that are structured in such a way that they are just a sequence of records. So like a log of records, and where you can't change any of the earlier ones. It's always just adding more stuff at the end.
Okay.
So it's a log structured database. But it's log structured distributed database. So okay, we have to talk about what the hell is distributed. So, well, okay, what's the contrast? Centralized versus distributed. So a centralized database is when you have a single organization or a single individual that they own, one or a bunch of computers, but it's a single, organization that controls the data all in one place, whether it's one computer or several. It's the centralized means that it's really one controller of the data.
So that's like your Facebooks then. They control all that information.
Yes, they are a centralized. They are one massive centralized database. Whereas if you had something decentralized, would be there are many organizations involved or many individuals, and it's not controlled by any one of them. It's controlled.
So that's
by
more like
collective.
when they did the black hole. What's Ben doing here? Tom has £10. Liz has £20. Ben has £8 million.
So that's Ben's ledger there.
That's my.
I wondered what on earth he was doing, but
it's a centralized ledger because he's got the only copy at the moment.
Benji.
Yeah.
Can I borrow a tenner?
Yeah. Hang on. Let me just update that. Sorry.
If you remember a few years back now, I think they created the picture of a black hole from bits of data from all around the world. So that's the distributed.
Yeah, so distributed computing is just using computers that are sort of all over the place. But distributed in this sense is really about distributed control. It's not controlled by any one central data controller or organization. So so this is how it plays into things like, this is why people are so excited. Like the libertarians are so excited about this stuff, because it's like they don't want things to be controlled by the man, right? This is why people are so excited about Bitcoin, is because it's about a social thing, that it's not centralized.
It's controlled by the woman.
So hang on. So I've got this record. So this is my centralized.
Right. So what you've got there is a ledger. That is an accountant's ledger. So
Right.
that you've got an account. You've got a ledger of who has what, and if you were to, so that by what you've done there by crossing things out is you've got a single centralized ledger and you're just changing it. But if instead you structured your ledger as a sequence of transactions, and you say, so when Liz said, I want, can you lend me £10? You don't reduce your.
You say Ben minus 10, Liz.
Exactly. That would be an entry in the ledger, and then the ledger would just be a sequence of transactions, and then it can be a log structured, because nothing ever changes. It just gets added to. It's immutable. This is what we call it. Right?
Immutable.
If everyone kind of has control over it, why can't everyone mess with it?
Right. So this is the crucial thing. So supposing that, right. So what we have right now is that Ben has the only copy of the ledger, and that makes it a centralized ledger. But what
So
if
he can mess with that?
So he can mess with it. We just have to trust him, right? We just say, Ben, keep track of it for me, and that's like what a bank does. A bank is a central authority, and okay, they're regulated and whatever, but they're a central authority.
Exactly. That's why we don't trust Ben.
And if he wants to mess with it, then he can mess with it. I mean, we may lose trust in him, but he can mess with it. Whereas, how do we go from that model to a decentralized model? If all of us had a copy of that ledger, and we all at the same time somehow managed to agree that we would add the next entry in the ledger would be, £10 moves from Liz's column to.
So even though it's got nothing to do with me, I would write in mine -10 to Ben, +10 to Liz.
Right. And that all of us somehow have a mechanism that we all agree that that's what the ledger is, because all of us will have a copy of it. And all of us will say, oh, I see that this is the next thing, and we put it in the ledger. So if we were able to do that, then we would be able to run, we would have invented our own virtual currency.
Oh, hang on. So we've all got the same piece
Literally
of paper.
become a millionaire by writing on a paper.
We have to agree that it means anything to us. Imagine something simpler. Imagine that we were running a babysitting circle.
Okay.
Right?
Let's not do that.
Are you running a babysitting circle?
I'm not at the moment. Not during.
Run a babysitting circle.
So imagine that the four of us were running a babysitting circle, right?
Okay.
And that we had. It wasn't how many millions of pounds that Ben has. It was how many like hours of babysitting can we trade with each other. And you trade it by actually doing some babysitting, right? And we all keep track of who has how many tokens. So we would all have a copy of this ledger. It wouldn't be just maintained by one person. So, and then that can be a currency. Okay, the currency is babysitting tokens, but it's a tradable currency, tradable for the service of babysitting. It's completely reasonable.
So like, we all have children, say, and I will say this week I will look after all the babies. So you all give me one token. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Or
right.
It doesn't have to be all the babies all at once. That might require you several tokens, but yes.
In Ben's ledger, the currency is babies.
That's a little bit disturbing. Yeah. No, it should be more like hours. Yeah.
Okay, so I have some questions. I mean, every time. So let's say we have.
How many babies is a Bitcoin worth?
Stop.
If we have 1,000 people in our babysitting circle.
Yes.
Okay. We all have to make a note.
Right. Yeah. So you're going to start to identify the first problem. That seems to be, what if we don't all agree? What if you add an entry in the ledger that says that so and so owes did some babysitting and other people don't agree, then we're screwed.
Okay.
So this is the primary problem that we have to solve. We have to solve the consensus problem. We have to make sure that all of our ledgers are all identical or are sufficiently identical.
Well, that sounds like a slippery slope if they're not exact.
They have to be eventually identical.
Oh, this sounds so dodge.
Yeah. So what we need is a consensus algorithm so that we all come to consensus about the sequence of transactions, the sequence of who has done babysitting for who. And so therefore, how many babysitting tokens everybody now holds. And that is the central thing that blockchain solves. Blockchain solves the consensus problem for log structured databases. There's some way in which, the four of us, if we were to follow this protocol as if we were computers, we would, by engaging in this protocol with each other, exchanging messages, we would eventually, probabilistically, come to agreement on the sequence of transactions in our ledger with like exponentially in decreasing probability that we disagree depending on how deep in the ledger. So we might disagree about the last entry in the ledger, but there'd be astronomically, highly improbable that we disagree on an entry in the ledger that's like 3 entries deep or 10 entries deep or something.
So the blockchain is just a series of sort of transactions, and it's special because we all have to agree on it somehow.
Yes. So the magic is, how do we agree? How do we achieve consensus?
How do we agree?
That's the blockchain, Ben. Have you been listening?
that is then the interesting bit about the difference between like Bitcoin and like other systems. So let's start with, how do they do it with Bitcoin? So in Bitcoin, the ledger, of course, is like the babysitting circle example, but it's called Bitcoins instead, and it's someone's made up currency.
I write a series of books called the Bitcoin Sitting Club and just replace all the babysitting terms in the babysitting club books with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
You could do that. I don't know if anyone would buy it, but yeah. So here's how they do it. Here's how they achieve consensus. It's monumentally wasteful.
Oh.
And that's what's better about the system I work on. But we'll get to that. Let's start with the horrendous and frankly immoral way of doing it.
Oh, this is this is getting good.
So when Bitcoin people talk about mining, they're pulling the wool over your eyes and trying to excuse something that's immoral. Let's get to that. What that is.
So is this where they get rid of the babies?
It's not. The babies are sent down the mine.
It's not a baby munching machine, but it is more like it's a planet destroying machine. That's what it is.
Wow.
So it's it's some degree of moral equivalence there. So the trick is we find a way for us to agree who had the right to add the next page in the ledger.
Yeah.
So the ledger will be structured into pages, and on each page there'll be a certain number of transactions, which are like so and so has done babysitting for so and so, move something from one person's column to another. So it's this. So that's the sentence. It's a ledger, but it's structured into pages, and we have to somehow agree who will write the next page. They will gather from everybody, all the transactions that are going on in our babysitting circle, and they will write them down on one page, and they'll say, this is the page. And we have to somehow figure out that we agree that it was their right to publish that page, and that we all say, okay, yep, that one's good.
It just seems like you pushed the problem further on instead of just
having. So how do we do that? How do we do that?
Okay, yeah.
All right. So here's the analogy. The analogy is it's the first person out of the four of us to solve a really hard Sudoku puzzle.
Oh, I love Sudoku.
So Sudoku is an example of a puzzle that takes quite a while to solve as a human, but it's quite easy to show someone else that you've solved it.
Yes.
Right. So
can I make an embarrassing confession? I did a Sudoku for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I hate them because, as you say, it's very easy to do the rules, but it takes ages to do.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was trying to keep quiet. And she said, "Oh, yeah, you'll do that in 5 minutes." I was like, "Right, challenge accepted." 4 hours later, after she'd gone to bed, I finished it, but I got it wrong.
Oh no!
No!
But it also is very easy to see when you got it wrong. Would you like to know the other thing? Mar Woolley loves a Sudoku. She loves a Sudoku.
I hate Sudoku.
In a Sudoku or just regular?
Oh, she likes the big ones, the 16 by 16, the samurai. The bigger, the crazier, the better. She loves a Sudoku.
Okay, so we all do Sudoku to work out.
Yes. So we all race. All of us race to who can do the Sudoku puzzle first.
Yeah.
And
but Mar Woolley's better at it, so Mar Woolley is going to do much better than everyone else.
Well, that's what's called that she has more mining power than the rest of us.
So my mining, I've got more GPUs mining away with Mar Woolley. Solving really, really big 16 by 16 Sudoku puzzles. So the principle is, yes, we all race to solve this problem, and whoever gets there first, they can show everybody else, they can prove to everybody else that they've got it right. Everyone can see that they got it right. It's quite easy to verify. It was hard to solve. And that means whoever got there first, they have the right to create the next page. And that's basically it. That's the analogy. Now, when you do this on a computer, you don't use Sudoku, obviously, but you solve an equivalent computational problem where it's really easy to see that you solved it, but it was really hard to solve. Yeah.
And what it is like, it's the
but I suppose what you're saying about the immoral aspect of it is that the solution doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't get you anything. It wasn't solving Sudoku. Didn't solve any problem for any of us. All it did was resolve whose turn it was.
Yeah, so it's wasteful in the sense that you're doing work that provides nothing.
Right.
Why can't it be random whose turn it is?
Well, that would be a much better solution. But let's look at why this one is so horrendous, because it is even more horrendous than you think, because this is being done on a worldwide scale, and they're not solving Sudoku, and it's not humans doing, obviously, it's computers doing it. And in the end, what does all this computation cost? It costs energy, it costs electricity, it costs carbon. So the amount of energy that is being used currently But you look at the economics of it, and you discover that Bitcoin is using approximately the energy consumption of Denmark.
Oh my God.
Right? And how many transactions per second is that thing doing? It's like 6 or something.
So hang on. So we are. So this is true. Okay, we are using the energy consumption of Denmark just so computers can play games.
Yeah, to see who's first.
In order to determine who is like the winner.
Yeah.
In order to allow people to send 6 transactions a minute, a second?
Per second, yes. 6 transactions per second, I think is what it's...
Why, Duncan, why does anybody want to be first?
That's an excellent question. So they get... you have...
Coin is, oh, Ben, you know, like your hopes and dreams of making this short episode, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen.
No, but it's a good question. We've got to the interesting bit now.
No, we have.
We'll cut everything. We'll cut all the beginning. Be fine.
These are,
this always happens.
Listeners and viewers, if you don't know where Liz has been this week, you will know why, because Duncan has been too interesting.
Yes, we spent ages talking about some shitty trip to Bletchley Park and some crappy visit to a car park. Now we've got to the interesting
I thought it was a lovely car park.
11 at night.
It had some very nice paving, that car park.
I'm going to be doing Sudoku. So why? Answer this question.
Why would you bother to take part, right? Because I can take part in mining, in running this Bitcoin system, but why would I do it? It's not altruistic. It's because I have a chance of making any money. Why is that? Okay. Because this system is monumentally wasteful and expensive to run, you have to give people a lot of money to take part, to take part in actually running this system. Because you've got these days you have to buy, specialized silicon. They're not just ordinary computers. They're not even GPUs. They're like specialized custom silicon to run these things. So why would people bother doing it? They get compensated. So what happens is that the first person to make that block, to make the next page in the ledger, which is what we call a block in the blockchain, they get given a certain number of Bitcoin. So assuming that Bitcoin itself is valuable, this is all kind of circular, right?
I mean, that's the thing. What I was going to say. Where's that money coming from? To give...
Don't try and find the foundation here, right? This is a circular argument, okay? Suspend disbelief for the moment and assume that Bitcoin is worth something to someone.
It's like a prize. You solve the Sudoku first. Your first prize is £100.
Or in this case, it's 12.5 Bitcoin.
12.5 Bitcoin.
Which at current market rates is something like £50,000.
Oh, wow.
To make that block.
So let's get this right. Millions of computers do the equivalent of Sudoku, consuming the power consumption of Denmark.
Yep.
And when they do that, they are given a fictional set of numbers which entitles them to claim £50,000. Did you say?
Something like that. Yeah, approximately.
I haven't
looked up the
current. Well, like I say, by the time this is done, it'll be nothing.
Yeah, I mean it goes up and down, but it's not that kind of order of magnitude. Yeah.
How much work do they have to do for that 50,000?
Do you mean like in megajoules or?
No, like how many man hours is it, or?
It's done by specialized computers, so it doesn't correspond to man hours. It's
right. Okay.
Well, it's the energy consumption of Denmark. That tells you how much energy. That's the work you have to do.
Yeah, but I suppose my question is kind of, is it 12.5 Bitcoin for nothing really, or is it 12.5 Bitcoin for? Is there a cost?
There's a huge cost.
Being
the energy of Denmark.
Well, no, but that's the cumulative cost.
Yeah, but there's if you own like a dozen of these machines, you'd have had to pay for them, and then you've got to power them. Each one is like a kilowatt of energy or something. Right. And the chance in each 10-minute segment, the chance of you being the one that makes the Bitcoin is quite low. It's very low. You're running a lottery basically, where the payoff is high, but the chance for each particular one is low.
So it costs me a penny to play Sudoku every 10 minutes, but I might win £16,000 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's as I say, like a kilowatt per machine, that kind of order of magnitude.
Yeah, I have to pay for the electricity while I'm playing Sudoku. I have to pay to keep the lights on. And I feel this analogy is getting a bit strained, but I can't believe how much Bitcoin has gone up. And look at this.
So what's that? $16,000 per Bitcoin, right? And I can't remember now. Did it used to be 12.5 Bitcoin, but I think it recently halved again. Every few years, the amount that you get per block halves.
So what we're looking at here, for those who are listening to the podcast and not watching the YouTube video, is Ben showing us the stock market value of Bitcoin. So very earlier on, in 2015,
Bitcoin US dollar exchange rate.
Yeah. So 2015, it was $270-ish for a Bitcoin. Is that right? Yep. And in 2018, it went boom.
There was a huge spike. That was around the time when the system
up to around $20,000 for a Bitcoin. Whew.
So it really works, mate. I mean, so giving somebody a few Bitcoin, there is an incentive to play this game, just to be the person that gets to be in charge of the pen, the person that gets to hold the conch.
Yeah, because we've all agreed in the rules of our game that whoever gets to hold the pen gets given $50,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, Tom's point about money, doesn't mean anything. Well, look, I've got a £20 note here, okay, and that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it just says.
I'll take it off you if you don't think so.
It says, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of
£20.
Whatever it is, £20.
Yeah.
So it's
Ed, could you pass that one over? Could you...
Yep, here you go. There you go.
Thank you. It's lovely.
So notice that cash is a very nice decentralized system. There's no central register of who has what.
But it can, yes. Where does the money come from to support the idea that you've won the Sudoku? Here's your prize.
Because people are like Ben was just showing you the exchange rate. People are prepared to exchange Bitcoin for real money, and so therefore it's worth something. And so therefore, when you get 12.5 Bitcoin or 6.25 Bitcoin these days, I think it is, then that is worth something, and that compensates you for all the money, the electricity you've had to spend, and you can, in principle, you might be able to make a profit.
Is anyone else's brain melting? Suddenly I'm like, no money's real.
Yeah. No, most of economics is like just one big circular argument.
Yeah, it's mad.
But like,
let's go looting.
It's worth something because people believe it's worth something. That's what it is.
It is a simple construct. I understand that belief, but economics is based on the idea of production of goods. Though normally, I grow.
Right. So in principle, you can buy pizza in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is exchangeable for goods and services somewhat, a bit.
But the difference is the production of turnips increases the amount of goods in the universe. So we could trade in turnips, but I can grow turnips, and that's a good because then you can eat the turnip, you can use the turnip. I can't use the energy that I've wasted to create Sudoku.
No. So
I buy a pizza with my baby.
Stop trying to trade your baby for things.
I just
it was only babysitting tokens. It was just the babysitting tokens. It wasn't. Okay. So no, you don't make money by. It's not that Bitcoin itself is like a value creating thing. It's that Bitcoin is a currency that you can trade for real.
It's just a marker of value. Then, yeah.
But Bitcoin itself requires people to operate the system, and people who use Bitcoin need that service of the system existing.
No, as I understand it, though, Bitcoin is used a lot for like shady stuff. So,
Yeah,
like
so
organized crime.
Let's talk about that bit. So
like, why is it so good for that?
It's not. It's actually not, because so I mean, we were discussing earlier that you've got this public ledger of like,
exactly, yes.
Liz is gonna, has spent 2 babysitting hour tokens, and Ben has acquired them because he was, not kind enough to do it, but he did it for the babysitting token so that he could, it's all trading. So it's a completely public ledger. Everybody has a copy of the whole thing. So it's actually terrible for like money laundering and hiding things. Why do people think it is? It's because you don't put your name on your like column in the ledger. Instead, what you have is just great big numbers for like anonymous Swiss bank accounts. That's kind of what it's like. However, so it's sort of pseudo-anonymous. So it's a public ledger with pseudonymous identities.
Can you break the encryption to know that?
No, not really. Not unless you mess up. I mean, you can easily do something wrong.
It's effectively, it is secret then. I said I'm going to buy.
No. So maybe I answered the wrong question. You can't like I can't figure out what your account is and spend your money.
Yes.
But by doing some very clever graph analysis, I might be able to figure out that by looking at the pattern of transactions, who paid who, I might be able to do some de-anonymizing.
Right. So you can see how much money I've got going round. You just can't use it.
So I went to a conference once where there was a company, and it was like there was some company that was touting its wares in one of the sessions, and I think the guy used to be like the head of like compliance or something at a big UK bank, and he'd set up this little startup to do blockchain Bitcoin analysis, and he said, Bitcoin is fantastic for transparency. Like the Bitcoin enthusiasts, the libertarians are like, oh, it's brilliant for anonymity. And he's like, no, it's brilliant for transparency and like anti-money laundering because it's completely public and I can do all this graph analysis and I can figure out, everything. It's not nearly as anonymous as any of them think. And that's why it's not good for organized crime. Like back,
can you eventually find, can you find the person? So if the username is some line of letters and numbers or a Swiss bank account, could the police then use that to find who owns it?
If they're being careful, it's quite hard, but it's
most people aren't careful.
People often mess up, and when you interact with the real money system, that's where things become difficult. If you always keep your money only in Bitcoin, then but as soon as you order a pizza and have it delivered to your house, then they just go to the pizza company and say, well, who was that? What was their address? Or
so as long as you only have monopoly money, you're fine.
But as soon as you try to trade it on an exchange to buy, dollars, pounds, whatever, now you're interacting with other real organizations, and then they can track your identity. So that's how they tend to. So for example, just recently, I think the US government recovered all of the Bitcoin for the Silk Road people.
Because I guess for those who don't know, the Silk Road is an infamous drug trading.
It was all kinds of stuff, yeah.
Well,
drugs, all kinds of illegal stuff. So, and they were using Bitcoin for everything. Yeah, it was a huge black market, and they were using Bitcoin for everything. And they got shut down 7 years ago or something, because they believed that Bitcoin was much more anonymous than it really is.
Yep.
And just the last month or so, the US government, people were really excited. They saw that $1 billion worth of Bitcoin that had been sitting in the Silk Roads. People had identified the bank account of the Silk Road by doing this kind of graph analysis. And so they knew that money was sitting there. And they just, the other day, they saw that all that money had moved somewhere. And they thought, wow, someone's cracked the account of the Silk Road. Turned out, no, it was the US FBI. Had finally got through all the court processes.
That was a brilliant punchline. I just turned out the FBI down the road. They just walked in, said, "Can I have the money?" and they walked out with it. Crazy.
It had taken them years to get through the court processes to do the legal acquisition, and then eventually they said, "Okay, now we're transferring all the money, seizing
What's the FBI going to do with $1 billion then?
It's like criminal seizure assets. It's what they do all the time with real money.
Gin and tonics all round for Christmas party.
Christmas party.
I suspect it goes back to the US Federal Reserve. Treasury. It'll go to the US Treasury or something.
Spend it on things like elections.
But is it real enough for the US?
You have to pay taxes on it. So yeah.
You have to pay tax on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so I think we now kind of understand Bitcoin as much as we're ever going to do. So Duncan, we don't like that. It's not anonymous. I mean, that's incredible. I didn't know that. So it's not anonymous.
It's pseudonymous. Yeah.
It's pseudonymous, but if you know what you're doing, it really isn't. It's hugely wasteful.
Yep.
So how is your system better?
Right. So instead of us all racing to solve a pointless problem just to show who got there first, instead it's a systematic way of taking turns. And then that doesn't cost the Earth system, but that would not be decentralized, right? Because that would be what we call federated. That would be just, we've agreed amongst the four of us that it will be the four of us. That would not be open participation. That wouldn't be.
But other people could join, surely.
Not with that very simple system that I just
described. Oh, right, okay.
Because I literally said there's the four of us. We know who each other are. We each have a private key that we know and we can sign with that. There's some cryptography to show that we are who we say we are. But we have to know that it's the four of us in the first place, and then we can use this really, really simple system. So the next step up is to say you do something that's a bit more complicated, but it allows anyone to join and take part without anyone having to know who they are. So here's the idea: it's a bit like shares in a shareholding company. So you have some certain number of shares. We'll make 1 million shares, and these shares are going to be freely tradable in some marketplace, and the chance of you being able to create the next block, the next page in the ledger, will be proportional to the number of shares you own, the number of shares you control. That's going to be the idea. So we do some clever mathematics, and some magic cryptography, and we do some tossing of coins in a fair way, such that we're fairly sampling from the stake distribution.
But doesn't this sort of fall prey to the problem you said with Bitcoin, in that someone with a large amount of money could just buy up all the shares?
Yeah, but then they have to own half the money in the world or half the money in the system. So that's true. So you can destroy what you've identified there is what people call the 51% attack, right? So if
you need more than half to control the system, yes.
Right. So if you control 51% or 50% of the hashing power in Bitcoin, then you control all of Bitcoin.
Yep.
Whereas in this other style of system, the stakeholder style system, if you control 51% of the stake, you also control the system. But you try to set it up in such a way that doesn't happen.
So why you're not stopping that?
No.
But why would I not want to do that then?
If you were an attacker and you supposing the entire stake in this, supposing all the shares in the entire system is worth £1 billion.
Yep.
Right. So you have to spend £500 million to get half of it, and then on owning half of the shares, they're now worthless because you've destroyed the system. They're worth nothing to anyone as soon as you destroy the system. So if you buy up the company and shut it down, this isn't really a company. Okay, yes, there are shares, but it's a currency.
We come back to this idea that money only has value when you believe it.
It's only value because people believe in it. So
if
we realize that you've achieved
and no one's around, does it cost anything?
Can I still buy shoes with it?
Only if Thomas doesn't own half of it. As soon as Thomas owns half of it,
if I own one of your shoes,
it was when we all cotton on that Duncan's got 51%, we all go, actually, I'm out.
This is nonsense. I'm leaving. This is worth zero.
So Duncan has been using Haskell to build his cryptocurrency. Ben, you've just knocked up a PowerPoint.
Just copied one off the internet. But I'm doing an ICO. So if anyone wants any of these babysitting coupons, okay, just send £1,000 to podcast.
Could I offer my baby for a babysitting coupon? Could I swap Hazel for a coupon?
Stop with your swapping babies. It's they're not tradable.
Why haven't if it's so vulnerable? Why hasn't Bitcoin been hacked?
Oh, it has many times. So the whole system itself has not failed yet, but if you follow, and I don't suggest you do, and I don't either. If you follow the cryptocurrency news, you'll just hear all the time of hacks and things. Most of them are not hacks on the systems themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not fundamental flaws that completely destroy the system. But it has happened from time to time, of not Bitcoin itself, but some of the alternatives and competitors to Bitcoin. But you hear all the time about foreign currency exchanges that convert money between fake internet money and real money, them getting hacked and losing all the money and stuff. There's full of stories of that stuff. I think there's a website how many days has it been since the last $100 million level hack of a cryptocurrency, and it's never very high, the number of days. So Bitcoin is probably, amongst all of the cryptocurrencies, is probably one of the more reliable ones, just because enough people have spent enough time looking at it. So, and there's a really big incentive to exploit it if it has any problems. So, sort of by sheer brute force of engineering, it's probably okay. But if you're going to build something new, you really need to, I think, apply proper computer science and try to do things properly.
How many cryptocurrencies are there?
Oh, hundreds.
Okay.
There are websites which I do not recommend you go to that rank them all and tell you how much they're all worth. And they're full of horrible adverts which will try to persuade you to buy them.
How many of them would you say are likely to end up being credible?
That's very, very hard to know. I don't go in for that sort of prognostication.
Okay, now we can go to the puzzle zone.
To the puzzle zone! Liz. Do you remember the puzzle?
I do remember the puzzle. It was about the bridges, wasn't it?
It was about the bridges. I'm very impressed. Okay, so we have 4 land masses. A, B, C, and D.
Is this graph theory?
It's a bit of graph theory for you. The landmasses are connected by bridges that look like that. And let me call that in and show it's a landmass. Your task, Liz, is can you travel around that map using every bridge once and only once?
So no, I don't think I can.
Why?
So I wanted to spend a lot of time on this week and I forgot. But I think how I think I would approach it is probably not the right way. But I think I would try every way. And I would try and find a way to show that I tried every way.
Certainly. I mean,
exhaustive.
I mean, this is a finite state space. So
which really you'd want to do by writing a computer program, of course.
In Haskell.
Of course.
Yes,
absolutely.
So here, you are quite right. You cannot do this. And it took a mathematician to prove he could do this. Leonhard Euler, we may have spoken about him before. And he used a beautiful, beautiful piece of logic. What he said was, suppose you're doing your tour around the map, but you're not at the beginning and you're not at the end. Okay? Whenever I move into a city, B, or landmass B, I have to be able to leave that landmass. If I come into that landmass twice, I have to be able to leave twice. If I come in 3 times, I have to leave 3 times. So if I'm not at the beginning or the end, every landmass has to have an even number of bridges connected to it. Because every time I go in, I have to leave. Now, if I start, wherever I start, I only have to leave once. Wherever I end, I only have to enter once. So his theorem, this beautiful piece of logic, shows that if your map has if they're all even, if all of your nodes, as we call them, A, B, C, D, have an even number of bridges, you can start anywhere, you can end anywhere. And you can then go around the map, going over every bridge once and only once. But also, if you have a map that only has 2 nodes with odd numbers of bridges, then one must be your beginning and one must be your end. And in this case, if we count the number of bridges, here we have 3 bridges, here we have 5 bridges, here we have 3 bridges, and here we have 3 bridges. So you cannot go around Königsberg using every bridge once and only once. However, if we were to, let's say, delete that bridge, then this would become a 4, this would become a 2. Oop, that's not a 2, that's a 3, people. That's not what a 2 looks like. So then we know if we can now do this one, we would have to start at A or C. So let's try and do it. Let's start at A. Let's use a different color because let's do it. So let's start at A, go to D, C, B, A, B, C.
Easy.
Wonderful, beautiful little proof. Let me stop sharing that then. So, Ben, do you have a question for this week?
I do, and it's a fabulous question. It's easy to state, but it's quite difficult to. I hadn't seen that one before.
Is it Bitcoin?
No, but it's a right question. So, which has the most zeros at the end? The product of the first 50 numbers or the product of the next 50 numbers?
This is a good question. It's not obvious. It's not obvious.
1 times 2 times 3 times blah, 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 blah times 50, or 51 times 52 times 53 times.
Am I allowed to write a Haskell program to solve it?
You certainly are.
Yeah, we'll publish it.
Yes.
I don't think this is publishable.
Which has the most zeros at the end?
To be honest, I think you can do it with a bit of logic because what you're looking for a 0 is a 10, a factor of 10. So you're looking for all the numbers.
No. Hold on, Tom.
Next time.
Next time.
And so let us rate the idea of cryptocurrency on a score. So please, Ben, Liz, and Duncan, please rate the idea of cryptocurrencies on a random scaling of your choosing and a random point upon that scaling. Ben,
I've solved the problem, but I'm not going to tell you the answer. I've already written a Haskell program. I've done it.
So your scaling is secret and it's pseudonymized. We don't know it, and you've solved that problem, and you'll get first choice to pick that point upon it.
So
Ben, would you like to
Haskell
rate
program.
Cryptocurrency?
Yes, I'm going to rate this at this episode the power consumption of Belgium.
Wonderful.
Ambitious.
And Liz.
So what am I rating? I'm rating cryptocurrencies rather than the episode.
Yes.
So I'm going to rate it out of 20, which is the number of years I think I've known Duncan. And I'm going to give
It's also the number of years we've been doing this podcast.
this particular episode, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to give it 10 because I think it's inevitable that they're going to stay with us. But they scare me a bit.
I mean,
and that's it.
Okay, so it falls to me to give. I will give it a rating on Bitcoin to Cardano, and I will give it a Doge coin because that's another form. The Doge
a very
coin.
internet meme of you. Do you know that Dogecoin was worth $2 billion at one point?
At one point, it spiked.
Yeah.
I know. This is the sad thing about it.
The whole thing was a joke, and yet it was worth $2 billion.
I hope that's now told everyone what they should think about cryptocurrency at this point in time.
Indeed it does.
It has been a delight to have you on, Duncan. We've been trying so long, and I'm so glad we've actually done it. Thank you so much, Duncan. Thank you. And so with that, I have been Thomas Woolley.
Hang on, Tom. You
Yes.
owe me 20 quid.
It lost value. Sorry, it's worth 20p now.
Oh,
2p.
Didn't we establish that Thomas owned more than half the money in the system, and therefore the whole thing was worthless?
Does someone owe me a baby?
He's been Thomas Woolley. I'm now Thomas Woolley's creditor.
I've been Liz.
And I've been Duncan.
We have been Maths at winning at maths, losing a life. Good night.
Bye-bye.